His fiancée glanced across the table and spoke 8 words that broke the stillness I had endured for half a decade. At his engagement dinner, amid crystal chandeliers, white-gloved servers, and a family that had spent years pretending I didn't exist, Olivia Harper, the one who started MedBridge. Are you the same one? In the air, each fork froze. As my mom took a deep breath, her pearl necklace moved. As if his brain were buffering, my dad blinked twice. Brandon, my brother, and the pride of the Harper family, had always been the favored offspring. But now he looked at me as though I had materialized from a fantasy he'd never dared to contemplate. I kept my composure. Nodding once and sipping my wine as if it were any other Thursday, I met her gaze. However, on the inside, I felt like I was teetering on the brink of each Thanksgiving when someone had disregarded me. Whenever my name was formally recognized at a graduation ceremony, people would applaud it gracefully. Whenever my parents called and asked, "How is your job search going?" "Perhaps Brandon can assist you in locating a stable situation," they concluded. Finally, the lady who would later become my brother's wife had finally made the connection. She was the director of strategic acquisitions for a major national health technology company. I was his sister, and she had no clue. I had never been featured in a public photo. Throughout our discussions, I had purposefully maintained a low profile. They asked me to the dinner out of duty more than pride, yet here we were face to face. After that, what happened was unanticipated. Making a statement that night wasn't my intention. I had no intention of drawing attention to myself or revealing anything significant, but you answer the door when the truth slams on it, especially when your least loved ones start clamoring to lay claim to you. I couldn't help but smile as I relaxed and saw their assumptions about me disintegrate before my eyes. And guess what? Every night that I coded silently, it was worth it. My throat burned so badly every time I swallowed that the food tasted like dust. I couldn't help but wonder if I wasn't good enough at all times. Just look at the expressions on their faces. Started the process of finally recognizing my reality. Living in the pristine, exclusive, and stiflingly ideal town of Greenwich, Connecticut as a child was like being in a snow globe. Our brick colonial home had black shutters and a comb-over grass. It was at the end of a peaceful cul-de-sac, the type of setting where anticipation was so pervasive that it didn't need verbal expression. My dad, Dr. William Harper, had a wide range of medical interests. He specialized in neurosurgery, the one who hospitals contacted when they wanted the seemingly impossible done. He carried himself with the self-assurance of a man whose actions had always been acknowledged and cherished. With a gaze that could sever marble, my mother, Judge Katherine Harper, was equally imposing in a federal courtroom. Her confidence shone through her every move. Both her words and her silence were powerful. After that, there came Brandon, my brother, older by 4 years, academically gifted, varsity athlete, spend weekends volunteering in a children's hospital, an exquisitely crafted walking resume, with a full scholarship and a family toast ready. He followed in our father's footsteps like it was inscribed into his DNA, admitted into Johns Hopkins. I felt like a footnote, the one whose interests lay in computer science, the one who preferred coding books to cosmetics, the one who became giddy over logical progressions and spent hours making games that no one ever played. It used to be that I believed I was just unique. Apparently being different was a sign of being faulty in my family. There was no supper, there was a debriefing. What did everyone accomplish today was my dad's go-to opening line. It was as if he were making a list of things to accomplish. Whatever Brandon worked on, whether it was a paper, an internship, or an internship with a medical professor, he always managed to get it perfect. My turn would follow. I proudly said, I created a website for the book club of my English teacher. At the age of 15, I was bursting with pride over the interactive elements that I had independently developed. "That's nice, Olivia," my mom said, her grin barely reaching her mouth. "Still, you need to zero in on a topic that's important to universities. Maybe a debate team, authentic leadership. Not pastimes." The word hobbies stayed. It went beyond a simple dismissal. It constituted a sand line. It felt as if all the things I cared about were trivial, something I would grow out of. Laptops were playthings. True achievers sported robes or scrubs. I stayed up late learning JavaScript and fixing broken code, and no one ever inquired why I was so tired. My underbelly would go unnoticed if my grades remained stable. The flash drive with the scheduling software I had developed for our school's annual fundraising was something I brought home with me one afternoon at 16. I was dubbed a genius by the event planner, said I spared them a lot of time. During a PTA night, she even informed my parents. The reaction of my mom, Olivia, is gifted in many areas. However, her law school qualifications are our present priority. Is it time for law school? I had never expressed a desire for it. Their choice had been made. It wasn't until my junior year that I got my first taste of fame, at least from those outside the household. I created a medical inventory system from scratch and used it to qualify for the Northeastern Youth Programming Finals. As luck would have it, Brandon's acceptance to Harvard Medical School fell on the same Saturday as his celebratory meal. My mom seemed really unhappy when I informed her. "Oh, darling," she murmured, putting her palm on her breast, as if I had just broken the news that someone had died. "Invites have already been distributed. You must attend your brother's special day." Therefore, I competed solo. It seemed like every other child's parent was in the crowd, applauding, yelling, and even filming on their phones. My water bottle was barely warm, and my seat was marked with an incorrect spelling of my name. Also, I came out on top. Top spot? I was informed I had vision by the judges, who were real engineers from Boston Tech. I acted as if I were twice my age. That night, I returned home with my award, prepared at the very least a nod. There were several family cheering Brandon on when I arrived at the house. My dad reverted to his champagne and remarked, "That's wonderful, dear," as I raised my trophy to show him. That night, I made up my mind to give up. No ill will intended, for the sake of staying alive. Projects were no longer brought up by me. When they referred to my job as tech stuff, I stopped pointing out their mistakes and instead smiled when they said I was still figuring it out. I adapted to their lack of speech. I allowed it to make me believe that my love wasn't enough, which was the worst part. Applying to Ivy League schools and writing flawless essays on my ambitions to continue my mother's work were the normal forms of pressure that I faced throughout my senior year of high school. Rather, I subtly sent my application to the University of Washington. They provided me with a full merit scholarship and boasted one of the best computer science departments in the nation. I cautiously showed my parents the acceptance letter when it arrived, hoping for the best. As if it were a parking ticket, my dad examined it. "You're wasting your potential," he stated with an air of calm authority. "You might be able to get into Yale with your test scores." "Computer science is all right, but it's not the right career path for someone as intelligent as you," my mom said. "Such a transactional experience." "That field isn't fit for a Harper," was their intended message. In that condescending manner that older siblings frequently exhibit, Brandon attempted to cushion the impact. "Perhaps it's just a phase," he remarked, caressing my shoulder, as if I were 4 years old. "Eradicate it from your life prior to attending law school." I was strangely relieved and saddened as I packed for college. I was bidding farewell to the only world I had ever known. But now I would finally get to live in a place where being yourself wasn't met with shame. On my departure day, there were no sobs. Instead of hearing, "We're proud of you," I received a stress management checklist from my mom. Notifying them of a change in major is important, as my father warned me. I made a solemn vow to myself while sitting in the back seat of the Uber laptop, resting on my lap with the Seattle skyline just peeking out from behind the clouds. I would not dare set them incorrect. I would show that I was correct. Attending college was like letting fresh air into a stuffy house through a never-before-opened window. I wasn't the underachieved daughter of Judge Harper or the disappointment of Dr. Harper while I was at the University of Washington. I was simply Olivia, a first-year computer science major with a penchant for unending typing and a notepad smeared with ink. As I glanced around my first computer programming class, I thought, these are my people. Not a single one questioned my big selection. I was warned not to aim high. It was as if they had a same language. Binary jokes, caffeine-fueled marathons of code, debugging late-night whiteboard discussions that somehow seemed more alive than any supper I'd ever had back home. I felt like I belonged somewhere else for the first time. Samueltha Diaz and I met at that same spot. It seemed as if she could stroll into any room and light it on fire with her reckless enthusiasm. A native Seattleite Cuban-American, hilarious and as sharp as a razor. Sitting next to me in advanced algorithms, she discreetly murmured, "Want to finish this assignment in half the time and still make it better than his example?" I can totally relate to how she rolled her eyes at our professor's dry delivery. It made me chuckle. It took us half the time to finish. Next, we incorporated elements that he had not considered. Through our shared friendship collaboration in coding and ultimate aim, Sam and I became inseparable. Her brilliance was more than that. Something inside her was the driving force. Lupus was finally diagnosed after 3 incorrect ones for her mother. She once informed me, "Doctors aren't the problem," while we sat at a 24-hour cafe and shared sketchbooks. Well, the system is. Every day patients are let down by communication. A better one can be constructed by us. Those words lingered in my mind. We remained up late making wireframes while everyone else went out on the weekends. In order to participate in student entrepreneur activities, we forwent attending football games. By the conclusion of our sophomore year, we had laid the groundwork for what would later become MedBridge, a platform that allowed healthcare practitioners and patients to communicate securely in real time. They were in the dark, not my relatives, not the ones I knew in high school. Even the resident assistant at our hostel mistook us for 2 shy females who had a serious coffee addiction. The garage of Sam's parents was our home for the summer. 2 plain desks, a chalkboard, and a space heater that moaned like a ghost made up the unglamorous room. Her folks were quite kind, bringing lunches and asking us probing questions. Even though they were confused about what we were creating, they were nonetheless supportive. I was startled. Seeing her parents' joy at even the smallest successes and their dad's jokes about being our first investment made me appreciate how little support I had received. My mother in Greenwich would have thought I was referring to a fraternity if I had said beta version when we were still living there. Our prototype was ready by our junior year. We competed in events all around the Pacific Northwest, snatched 3, dropped 2, received comments, "I feel much better now." After one event, a former chief technology officer of a HealthTech company approached us privately and said, "What have you built potentially life-saving?" A week later, we submitted an application for a provisional patent. In a bizarre world, we got our first little contract with a local Spokane clinic chain. Cash on hand, actual users, issues at risk. I felt compelled to inform my parents. Yes, I did. However, their voices would always appear in my thoughts whenever I envisioned the discussion. Is that a reliable source of income? Is health insurance a choice for you? Complete your law degree first, wouldn't you? Consequently, I made sure the calls were brief. Class is good. I am staying safe, yes. No, I ain't seeing no one seriously right now. Regarding MedBridge, they made no inquiry. Unbeknownst to them, it even existed. Unfortunately, word got out that Brandon had taken over as head resident at Columbia Presbyterian. He was seeing Claire, a pharmaceutical representative who was very impressive. His new Upper West Side condo had 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a view of the park. At the same time, I was figuring out how to make the most of a $2,000 stipend while eating instant noodles and sharing a restroom with Sam. And yet, I felt content. I am truly, deeply, extraordinarily delighted. Despite our setbacks, despite the fact that we had to start again from the beginning when our code crashed at midnight, even if we fought over the interface design and had no coffee. Because it belonged to us, not a single board, not a single boss. There is no specific attire recommended. Nothing more than 2 females who are obstinate, have computers, and think healthcare may be compassionate again. However, I must warn you that there is a cost associated with starting from scratch. Living 2 lives at once became too much for a senior year. At the time, I was Olivia Harper, a Seattle-based co-founder of a health technology firm with actual customers and a solid foundation for future growth. I was between internships when I was in Greenwich. We spoke with Brandon over dinner. My mom remarked one day when she phoned, "You're on his mind. How far back in time is this?" With my arms crossed, I inquired. "A delicate about your future," was her kind phrase. "We have a connection at Apple. Junior support personnel might be on the horizon. Of course, it's entry level, but it's still something." My throat started to stiffen. The offer was irrelevant. However, this was due to the fact that they were unaware that I had already secured a $300 pilot deal with a healthcare network that was twice as large as Apple's medical division. But I still ate it, was thanked. I said I would give it some thought. Phone rang. Afterwards, I went to Sam's room and burst into laughter till my stomach ached. I would weep if I pretended not to laugh. The truth was that way. Everybody thought we were the underdogs. As far as our families were concerned, we were just children with fleeting aspirations. We beheld the future. We were constructing it. Furthermore, absolutely nobody could revoke that from us. We started MedBridge out of a cramped, expensive co-working location. Our initial office was in that space, sandwiched between a noisy SEO firm and a financial business with ping-pong tables. We shared a second-hand monitor and purchased 2 folding chairs from Craigslist as we were short on furniture funds. We fooled ourselves into thinking it was minimalist when we taped a whiteboard to the wall. Cash was tight. However, we were constructing a genuine project. Sam programmed into the dawn as if her life depended on it, completing builds in caffeine-fueled bursts. Pitch decks, client calls, product flow, and front-end work were all within my purview. We'd trade off going to the bodega across the street for granola bars and $1 cups of coffee. Our unofficial therapist turned out to be Jose, the proprietor of the bodega. "Your presence here reminds me of the day I started this facility," he said to us once. "Everything you do seems to be driven by an intense desire." He was correct. Why? Because uncertainty, mounting debt, and the nagging worry that our relatives could have been correct all along were pursuing us. This anxiety subsided, however, each time a physician informed us this saved us 3 hours of paperwork a day, or whenever we onboarded a new clinic. We had hit upon something. After judging one of our pitch contests, a former venture capitalist gave us $50,000 a month later, making him our first angel investor. Greg Salazar was our guy, and he had faith in us the moment he heard us. He claimed we brought back memories of his own beginnings. I believe he saw the intensity in our gaze, the type that emerges when all you have to lose is your faith. With that sum, we were able to pay for our first employee, a little public relations push to raise awareness and legal assistance with our official incorporation. Chung Tyler? Building better ways to sell ads didn't make me feel anything the brilliant Stanford back-end engineer explained as he just left a 6-figure job at a digital giant. He joined our team for half the compensation and double the hours. Everything shifted after Tyler joined the team. Our product was successfully launched into the real world, leaving beta behind. 2 regional health networks and an outpatient clinic chain were our contract signings at year's end. Not enormous, but sturdy. Sufficient to manage financial flow. Sufficient to get momentum. Unfortunately, my folks never heard about any of this. Reason being, I kept it a secret from them. No way. The outcome was very clear to me. Interesting, but is it sustainable? My mom would reply with a tight smile. When my dad wanted me to talk to someone about serious job options, he'd recommend I meet with one of his buddies at Mass General. Brandon would give me an expression that suggested he was trying not to feel sorry for me. Therefore, I chose to remain silent. Whatever they wanted to think, I allowed them to believe. I continued to face difficulties. Not quite there yet. They cling to the hope that one day they may find the legendary road that leads to understanding. Additionally, I twistedly utilized their lack of response as motivation. Kindling was added with each dismissal. Another log added to the fire was each subsequent check-in. "Hey, are you still in Seattle? It's fantastic." "Keep hustling," my dad told me one day when we were on the phone as if I were an Etsy jewelry vendor. "Is graduate school something you've considered at Christmas?" my mom wanted to know. "You can change directions." They were unaware that in the same week we had been approved to conduct a pilot program by Atlantic Care, the 3rd largest West Coast healthcare organization. Little did they realize that their formerly in-between-things daughter was now leading a team of 12, ensuring compliance with HIPAA regulations, and supervising the infrastructure that served tens of thousands of patients. I didn't offer them an opportunity, so they were unaware. I no longer let them into my life. That did hurt to a certain extent. At demo days, I would see parents flying across states to hear their children present their firms, and I would see them proudly brag about them on Facebook. At the same time, my mom texted me links to legal internships, while Sam and I were rewriting back-end APIs at midnight while eating leftover takeout. But I wasn't resentful. Everything was on me. I was really absorbed. As long as I kept working on MedBridge, I could tell myself that I wasn't going insane, that this was significant. On weekends we worked. Birthdays were forgotten. We declined dates. Our eyes hurt from staring at the codes. Reels of startup activity, such as launch parties, tech stories, and investment rounds, are visible to the public. They are blind to the nights you sob in the restroom over a server crash for which you have no clue. Nobody notices when your bank balance reaches $13.27 right before rent is due. No one is watching as you send out 37 unsolicited emails and receive just 2 responses, including a kind, "not at this time." The sacrifices go unnoticed, except that we experience them ourselves. Furthermore, we manage to outlast them. Very little. My God, I nearly gave up a number of times. Similar to the week our second biggest client, who had promised to sign a contract for a year, mysteriously vanished. For example, there was the time a male investor questioned Sam and me about our status as real founders versus tech girls playing business. Another time, we discovered that a rival firm had stolen some of our user experience design and released it with more resources and fanfare. What a painful one. We sobbed side by side in the break room of the office. Finally, we dried our cheeks and then constructed again. Much better. Surface cleaner. Superior intellect. We were fierce protectors of our territory. We honed our skills in unflinching negotiation, pitching without apology, and walking away from proposals that smelled fishy even when we were short on cash. The small wins, though, were also something to be proud of. An example of this would be the time a nurse notified us via email that MedBridge had helped her discover a life-threatening allergic interaction in a patient just before surgery. Similarly to the previous time, we looked at the data and saw that the delays in communication across hospital departments had decreased by 27%. You know, like the time Tyler showed up to work early and said, "I've worked for years in tech, and this something is off with this. I get a sense of purpose here." I managed to remain unnoticed by my family throughout it all. The reason wasn't embarrassment. Why? Because they no longer had any ownership over the fiction I was penning. It was mine to keep. Maybe they weren't deserving of seeing it if they couldn't perceive it without evidence imprinted in headlines and money signs. At this time, no, there was no sudden explosion at MedBridge. It progressed step by step, triumph by triumph, and defeat by defeat, much like most genuine things. 20 clinics were utilizing our software within a year after our initial customer launch. The comments made by users were candid, critical, and useful at all times. For the benefit of rural health professionals with excruciatingly sluggish internet connections, we laboriously spent months perfecting the UI, simplifying data syncs, and boosting mobile performance. A nurse or PA would contact us with a better idea every time we thought we had it figured out. We took note. We made changes. Our performance was enhanced. Construct quickly, repair quickly. That became our credo. And once again, investors took note. A mix of good fortune, careful planning, and dogged determination brought Series A to fruition. Directions given by an old supervisor. A demo that was spot on. Our venture capitalist partner's mother had lost her father in a hospital misunderstanding many years before. She saw a part of herself in our work. During our second encounter, Dana Walsh, who went by the moniker, Dana informed us, you two are going to change the way healthcare works, and not from the top down, but from the inside out. This wasn't merely a check that Dana wrote. She was a door opener. By the quarter's conclusion, we had raised $5.5 million, grown our development staff, added a clinical advisor, and established a permanent office in the heart of Seattle. It wasn't nice, but it felt luxurious since it had sunshine and functioning espresso machines. The intensity quickly increased. I had different expectations. The length, complexity, and political overtone of the sessions increased. We transitioned from a hobby project to overseeing financial models, partnerships, compliance teams, and operations. The realization that issues would arise at any time led me to sleep with a notebook next to my bed. When things became rough during negotiations, I brought in Kayla, an assistant who could manage 3 calendars, get me ready for calls, and talk me out of a spiral. The internal toll, however, was substantial, notwithstanding the exterior expansion. When your business takes up so much of your time, energy, and sleep, it's easy to forget who you are. We had been together since college, but now, things were starting to break apart. Devoid of confidence, yet exhausted, neither of us wanted to acknowledge that we were both exhausted. However, we persisted. This was important. Since medical professionals were utilizing our platform to coordinate efforts across specialties, simply said, it was the first time ever that patients could log in and see their doctor's notes written in simple English. Reason being, we were making a positive impact. That being said, not everyone was fair. More storyline number 1, the attempt to theft intellectual property. In Palo Alto, we were invited to a private health innovation conference one afternoon where we gave a pitch. Consider advisors, investors, and ex-founders of startups. After 6 months of development, we finally unveiled our new predictive warning system, which instantly compares patient records to identify potentially dangerous drug interactions. An enthusiastic applause followed. However, CareLoop AI, a glitzy new firm, debuted with a technology that was almost identical 3 weeks later. Their capital was greater. We need more public relations and a different slogan. My pulse was pounding as I stared at their landing page and saw that they had copied our button color scheme, completely paraphrased in a few places. It seemed as if someone had broken into our house and shuffled our belongings around to make it look like theirs. Dana moved quickly to hop in. A legal team was assembled. Although we lacked a patent for the functionality itself, we had evidence in the form of prototypes, email chains, GitHub changes, and timestamps. We were saved by our documents. In the end, CareLoop's creators removed the function covertly, and the media ignored the matter. But that was not the case for me. The experience was terrifying, caused me to reconsider our sharing partners, whom we put our faith in, caused me to construct walls of a higher height. A scalpel was the tool I used to begin my investigation. What this experience taught me is that no matter how much you built with love, the world will still want to destroy you. The relationship that could have derailed it all. Expanded plotline number 2. I met someone just before our Series A closed. Nathan was his name. The building is home to the product manager of another firm. Endearing, perceptive, encouraging. This guy was great. He genuinely listened when I talked about my work and answered thoughtful questions. After months of barely getting by, it was like breathing fresh air. I could rely on him to bring me coffee, hold on till we finish meeting, sit quietly close by, and watch while I debug. Typical, I suppose. Establishing a base until things changed. "You know, I've been thinking," he remarked, as we sat across from one at our favorite Thai restaurant one night. After a particularly long day of dealing with infrastructure difficulties and investor calls. Maybe you'll be able to ease off a bit after this deal ends, I moaned. Explain it to me. I mean, you've made your case, haven't you? You made an impressive creation. You're all set financially. Rest easy now. Perhaps talk to someone. Alternative sell and begin over. Take a seat. Come on, relax. My gaze fixed on him. This is when it hit me he's never fully grasped my intentions. That this was only a stage for him, an undertaking, playground equipment. Not an assignment, an entire life. For a considerable amount of time I remained silent. I did nothing but gaze at my empty pad as the familiar pain in my chest, which echoed the words of my parents, lingered. Beyond that, I was certain that I would be unable to repeat the process. Coziness would have to take a back seat to my beliefs. Consequently, I put a stop to it that evening, pattered home by myself, tearfully exited the elevator, afterwards returned to my job, reason being MedBridge wasn't a springboard. It included the whole damn bridge. Not even someone close to me could convince me to cut it down. Sam took note upon his return to the workplace. Will you be all right? She handed me a chai latte and asked me subtly, not making a huge fuss over it. Yes, I said falsely. Nonetheless, she was able to discern its deception. We're going to succeed, she whispered. We executed it. 70 people were working for us by the third year. Healthcare facilities in 5 different states. Forbes TechCrunch and 2 large healthcare software businesses are all showing interest, and one of them is even secretly sniffing about with acquisition intent. You're not a startup anymore, Dana told us as she sat us down. You're quite the actor. I remained silent around my family even at that time. I took the same second-hand Mazda that I had driven to college on my way home for Thanksgiving. Rather than wear the fashionable coat that was hanging in my wardrobe, I wore an old wool coat. Consulting in tech was listed as my occupation. Their request was not further. No, I declined. To be completely honest, I was quite content with that. My life has never been more different. I wasn't constructing for their attention. This was important, so I built. Why? Because we were able to save time. Spending less, keeping people alive, and that is something that parental approval just cannot match. My mother's same cursive handwriting appeared on the invitation, which was enclosed in a substantial cream envelope. We cordially invite you to a celebration in honor of Brandon Harper and Claire Thompson, who are engaged. Which location? The Astor Room, a Manhattan posh reservation. Only eatery whose chandeliers are more valuable than my first venture money. Saturday night in the latter part of spring was chosen as the date. I set the RSVP card face down on my desk after staring at it for 1 whole minute. Hello, my name is Claire Thompson. For weeks, I felt like that name was hanging over me. Horizon Health Technologies, which is presently in the midst of acquisition, talks with MedBridge, valued over $200 million, her listed as their Director of Strategic Acquisitions. The due diligence documents that bore her signature were half of them. In person, we had never met. So far, Sam looked at me with the expression of someone who had just received the plot summary for a psychological thriller as soon as I informed her. Hold on a second, the lady who is attempting to purchase us is engaged to your brother. Apparently, I said as I sipped my lukewarm coffee. Is she familiar with your identity? In the dark, on all of our documents, I am listed as Olivia Harper. There are no photographs, no news outlet has ever utilized my surname. Samuel let out a whistling sound. Things are about to get interesting. Whether the timing was poetic or cruel, I couldn't make up my mind. Possibly both. My mom phoned me 3 times that week to discuss my dress. No need to be overly formal, Olivia. Aim not to appear such too. Practical this time around. Claire is from a very cultured household. 2 hospitals have her father on their boards. I clenched my jaw. Actually, my mother's wedding ring was less expensive than the dress I had selected, even though it was rather plain. My hair is styled in a gentle curl, and I'm wearing a basic pair of shoes and a sleek black silk garment by a rising New York designer. Subtle, sophisticated. As if that were relevant. Their story about me had already been written. My daughter is unemployed, passionate tech gal exploring uncharted territory. Among them, Brandon stood out. In this case, I was the enigma. Very well, let them be perplexed. With its ornate ceilings, golden details, and white-gloved servers who could recall your name, after only one encounter, the Astor Room seemed straight out of an old film. Off to one side, a string quartet delicately performed. A toast was made with a champagne glass, while guests spoke highly of one another's professions, vacation houses, and well-selected wine collections. Time of arrival was 6:02 p.m., just in the right time to avoid being dragged into setup, and just in the wrong place to cause a scene. I was shown to the private dining room by the smiling hostess, who then checked the guest list as the party got underway. First, Brandon saw me. "Hey there, well done." He drew me in for a brief embrace before pointing across the room. "You should get to know Claire." Indeed, she was present. Very tall, composed, a flawlessly fitted burgundy gown, stripped hairstyle with a low chignon. Her air of effortless corporate poise was contagious. As he introduced Olivia to Claire, Brandon's voice took on the subtle apology he usually used when introducing me. Claire extended a hand and said Olivia with warmth, "I'm delighted to have finally met you. Brandon can't stop mentioning you. Something about that made me question it." In any case, I grinned. "I am pleased for you. It makes me pleased for you too." My mother's voice chimed in from behind. "Olivia, that's great. You managed to find an outfit." That was her way of expressing that she thought I looked okay. "Aunt Margaret will be sitting next to you," she said. "You two have always shared interests." To put it another way, we've made sure you're seated far away from the important visitors. We started the dinner with toasts. My dad was the first to go, his voice resonating with emotion and his glass lifted. Finally, he addressed the crowd saying, to Brandon, who had always been an inspiration to them, a lady deserving of his admiration, "Claire is both intelligent and successful. Having you as a member of our family is a tremendous honor." My mom then gave a well-planned speech commemorating Brandon's achievements, including his time in medical school accolades and promotion. "Now he's found a partner equally committed to excellence," she said, regarding Brandon and Claire. Glasses were clinked by everybody except me. I drank some water and stared at Claire. Over and over, she seemed to be staring at me, muscular, inquisitive, like she was attempting to tie a knot that she wasn't quite sure how to tie. The initial meal showed up a complex dish with truffle foam. I could hardly taste it. Margaret, a cousin, leaned forward from across the table. "Olivia, are you still involved with that IT thing?" I grinned tightly. "That technology thing? Am I eligible for a promotion? Is this a question about seasonal shifts in retail?" she inquired. The other end of the line was interrupted by my uncle, before I could respond. Someone in Apple's tech support department might be able to help you out, as Brandon said. I think that's a perfect match. I sipped it slowly. I am truly content with my current situation. Olivia, there's no shame in accepting help. My dad chimed in from the side. Time to start planning ahead. Truly, it was astonishing the assurance with which they discussed a life they were completely unaware I was leading. Then a hush descended. Like a violin string cracking, Claire's voice pierced through the debate. "And you, Olivia," she remarked with a little narrowing of her eyes. "Excuse me, but I was wondering whether Harper was your last name." The whole table came to a stop. Squinting, Brandon looked away. "Absolutely it is," he laughed. "My sister she is." I was the object of Claire's intense gaze. "The Olivia Harper of MedBridge are you." She didn't accuse anyone in her speech. I was taken aback. It seemed as if someone had finally solved a long-standing mystery. Looking into her eyes, I gave a single nod. "Yes." Silently, her fork clinked on the plate. "Are you the founder, too?" A motionless figure stood there, not even flinched. "Of course I am." My brother's complexion turned white. Feeling perplexed, Claire looked across at him. "For months we have been attempting to acquire her company." Dad let go of his fork. My mom merely stared, her mouth agape, and her fingers stopped in mid-napkin adjustment. The emptiness grew. "Can you believe it?" My father's voice quivered as he finally spoke. I gave him a level face and said, "I think so." Together with another partner, I established MedBridge. We cater to more than 300 healthcare establishments around the country. We are currently in the final stages of purchase discussions with Horizon Health, the firm of your future daughter-in-law, and have raised $25 million thus far. Claire mumbled a giggle to herself. "My goodness, during the pilot phase, your platform cut down on patient communication failures by 43%. Our reports are filled with it. I had no clue. You were the sister of Brandon." I remained silent. I was at a loss for words, as if they had never laid eyes on somebody before they all gazed at me. Actually, they hadn't. The people behind the script had imagined a version of myself that worked for it. Nevertheless, that rendition had long since vanished. I existed, plainly discernible, manifestly so. Also, they couldn't say anything. That night when I departed from the Astor Room, an unusual tranquility settled into my chest. Dishonor is not the goal, no solace, enough said. The news had leaked. The world spontaneously burst wide, and the light finally streamed in my direction, not because I pushed it. My phone went boom when I returned home, a slew of texts from long-lost relatives. "Have you begun MedBridge? Are you kidding me, girl? This is ridiculous. It's causing widespread panic. Can you accept my resume, should you happen to be recruiting?" Lastly, there was the mothers. "It is imperative that we have a conversation. Noon at the Carlisle tomorrow for brunch. 11 a.m. Be punctual, please." Without a doubt, I will not use emojis. She seemed quite formal, as if calling a meeting. I remained silent. I chose not to. Well, I was already planning to go. I wanted to know how they would react to me now. Not because I was indebted to them, but because I had to. An ominous and impenetrable Carlisle awaited. Dressed in a fitted gray jacket and slacks, confident, tidy, and composed, I strode in at precisely 10:59. My folks were already at their tables, menus in hand, but unread. They both raised their heads simultaneously. My dad got to his feet, paused, and then offered a half hug. "You appear to be okay." "I appreciate it," I said, as I settled into my chair. As she brushed an unseen something off my sleeve, My mother extended her arm across the table. This morning we read about MedBridge. Everything about your growth metrics and financing history is just remarkable. One nod from me. That is very kind. A lengthy silence followed. Oliver, we're really proud of you, she said, her voice much lower than I'd heard it in a long time. I kissed her forehead. After offering me an entry-level position in Apple's IT department last week, you didn't appear proud. Bristling, she looked away. I was unaware. What you had created was unknown to me. My dad dove right in. We were unaware of that. Should you have paid attention? My voice was measured as I asked. If we had talked again, would you have suggested that I find a real job? He lowered his head twice, folded his napkin, and then spoke. It was confusing to us. We'll cover it. Then there was complete quiet. Also, I waited for it to sit for the first time. Feel it for them. After years of denying the significance of my reality, they were suddenly racing to catch up as they were confronted with indisputable evidence of its worth. I was not furious, though. No more. Just exhausted. I spoke slowly as I sipped my coffee and explained. I stopped telling you things because every time I tried, you made it clear it didn't count unless it looked like your version of success. My mom recoiled in fear. Wishing what was best for you was our only concern. No, I said softly. Your desire was for the known, your comprehension. Plus, you interpreted my deviation from the norm as a sign of failure. The words lingered in the air, revealing long-suppressed facts at last. My dad moved around in his chair. I see now that you've shown us how we were mistaken. That isn't the point, I whispered softly. We aren't trying to prove anything here. Visibility is key. As a person, nobody you expected me to be. They remained silent thereafter. Something inside of me began to relax in the stillness. Something I didn't know I was still lugging around. Their punishment wasn't my intention. I had come to establish a boundary between what had happened before and what was to come. Finally, it appeared like they were prepared to cross it. We would prefer to gain further information, my father timidly stated. What follows is information on your business, concerning its actual function. I gave a sincere "I'd like that" when I responded. We ended breakfast on a lighter note than when we started. Disagreement still persists. However, it is a beginning of a more favorable path. My apartment door was pounded that night. Standing there with an expression that veered between shame and contrition, Brandon held a bottle of wine. It seemed like we could use a chat. To let him in, I moved to the side. Truly, he searched his surroundings. On the open floor design, with its sleek lines and shelves adorned with startup knickknacks and industry accolades. This ain't no fairy tale. A simple "I know" was all I could do. Reclining on the sofa, he ran his fingers down the nape of his neck. I've been quite terrible, you know. Under my breath I grinned. And how much? His laughter filled the air. Afterwards let out a sigh. I never even asked, you know. Not at all. As the center of attention in my family, I failed to give you the opportunity to shine. Perhaps I simply preferred not to think there was actually more than one spotlight. His forthrightness surprised me. I suppose I enjoyed being the one they boasted about, he went on to say. It simplified everything more precisely. At this point, what happened? I inquired. He cast his eye over me. I now realized how much I had been missing out on. I had no idea. Liv, you created something very remarkable, and I'm sorry I missed it the first time around. The room was silent for an instant. No big deal, feeling completely satisfied. Through the ages, with respect to shifting, starting over. "Brian, I'm not angry with you," I eventually stated. "All I wanted was for you to be interested, to care, not because I was in need of a support system." On the other hand, I yearned for a sibling. His gaze lowered to the wine bottle. "Cabernet was on my list. Remember how you feel about red." I grinned. "Oh, sure, indeed I do." For the following 2 hours we conversed. No joke. Considering our job, this is our life, our anxieties. Talking about growing up in a home that valued intelligence above empathy and the pressure to succeed at all costs. He inquired about MedBridge in a serious way. Concerning his patients, I inquired. For what seemed like an eternity, we finally discovered something we could agree on. He stopped at the door on his way out. "Just wanted to mention that Claire thinks you're great. Her intuition is spot on." His laughter filled the air. "Get closer since that's what she wants. In her mind, the acquisition won't affect our relationship in any way." My response was a nod. "I likewise do not." I truly meant it, which is a first for me. Since I was a kid, there was a gradual change, tragic reunion, and a group embrace, accompanied by swells of symphonic music, were conspicuously absent. Rather, there were subtle changes, modest actions, that did not alter the course of events, but did begin to mold what was to come. Instead of lecturing or trying to guilt-trip me, my parents just wanted to talk to me the next Sunday. "All you have to do is speak." Non-judgmental inquiries regarding MedBridge were posed by my mother. The technology, its influence, and its structure were all things she wished to comprehend. Even more embarrassingly, she was honest about downloading several articles on the HealthTech business, saying, "I never really got it before," she continued, "but I am making an effort to learn." Its significance exceeded my expectations. My dad had a different strategy. "Can he stop by the office?" he wanted to know. For a moment, I shied away. Still, I couldn't help but feel uneasy at the prospect of him perusing my life, making judgments and comparisons to the clinical settings and academic achievements that were so familiar to him. "Yes," I said, "he should be commended for not assuming any level of expertise upon his arrival." He moved carefully around the open floor plan, nodding to members of our team, and stopped to inquire about the features shown on our demo wall. He stared intently as I demonstrated how our latest module monitored the duration of interactions between patients and healthcare providers. "This would have changed a lot of outcomes in my OR days," he said almost to himself. After that, he shook my hand more formally than a little boy. "Olivia, you have created something truly extraordinary. Not, I'm proud of you. However, it was unnecessary. Truly it was. I was satisfied with it." A startling link connecting the two realms was Claire. In her professional life, she maintained a level head and was fair. Despite learning about my relationship to Brandon, she never made the acquisition about me. Indeed, she took great care to establish limits, guaranteeing that the agreement remained impartial. I now hold her in even more esteem because of that. For her part, she turned up. Following strategy calls, we began to grab coffee. Initially, everything was kind and businesslike. But before long, we were giggling at my mom's spice rack Brandon's habit of leaving cupboard doors open and other peculiarities of our family. Similar overbearing parents had raised Claire. She understood. One day she told me, "You don't have to forgive everything, but it's okay to make room for something new." Then I went ahead and did it, rather slowly. Be careful, though one can only dream. A return to more casual, smaller Sunday dinners was noticeable. On sometimes it's just Claire, Brandon, and I. We order takeout and watch documentaries. At one point, my mom dropped over with some homemade lasagna and no unsolicited advice. "Thought this might interest you," my dad captioned the digital healthcare equity article he texted me. Progress, not flawless. Theirs wasn't the most significant change. Somehow I had it. I had erected barriers so thick that I had forgotten what was beyond them for a long time. Silence, I had told myself, was strength, and being invisible would keep danger at bay. Indeed, it did for some time. However, upon being visible, I came to the realization that the armor was unnecessary. My assistant Kayla convinced me to give a single press interview, so I gave in. Second two. Next up, a podcast, a keynote address will follow. Ghost Genius started to seem like less of a moniker. I had no problem with that either. Reason being, I stopped worrying about being found out. Nothing remained for me to demonstrate. Plus, there's nothing to construct yet. Both Sam and I remained steadfast. Everything with Horizon went off without a hitch. Within their innovation section, we assumed senior positions while maintaining creative autonomy. All over the nation, and eventually even beyond hospitals, began using our platform. And a pleasant surprise, the role of a mentor. At a class I ran once a month, I introduced high school girls from underprivileged regions to technology, and more significantly, encouraged them to believe in themselves. Everything that someone should have told me when I was 15 years old, I told them. You're not really out there. You're not really delicate. An ambitious goal is not out of reach. You are simply tardy. Amara, a Bronx Jr., was the one who informed me. My mom feels coding is a waste of time. It is her desire that I follow in her footsteps and become a nurse. I inquired, "What is it that you desire?" Her gaze met mine. In order to construct things that do not yet exist, so I grinned. Then continue constructing. You'll see her change her mind. In any case, even if she doesn't, your future will. That phrase stayed with me. The connections I had spent a great deal of time navigating, tangled up in anticipation, letdown, and quiet, were evolving into something new. Not flawless, but truthfully, to me that was the true meaning of recovery, leaving the past behind, while still permitting the subsequent events to unfold in a unique manner. Life had settled into a new routine 6 months after the engagement dinner, when I hadn't realized I needed until it had taken root. Horizon Health Technologies' acquisition was completed promptly. As previously agreed upon, Sam and I continued to hold leadership roles in innovation and strategy, even after MedBridge was formally spun out into a wider ecosystem. It was more than a merger. It was the coming together of forces with a shared goal. On all 3 continents, our platform was being rolled out. Singapore, Toronto, and Amsterdam hospitals were among those that were on board. The translation modules were put through their paces. Results for patients were becoming better. We had increased the size of our workforce. The number of women employed increased. There should be more individuals of color. Even more others who, similar to us, had previously been informed they weren't quite the right fit. It appeared to be a classic example of success from the outside. However, the most significant change did not take place in executive suites or on Excel spreadsheets. It was in the seemingly hard task of quietly mending relationships that I found it. Not only were my parents physically present, but they were also emotionally present. Things got off to a terrible start for my perfectionist mother. The line between adoration and embarrassment was blurry, and she didn't know how to inquire without coming across as condescending. Afterwards, she sent me a link via email one day. How predictive AI can help lower patients' risks. There is no message. I will not remark. This reminded me of MedBridge. Was all that was needed for the subject line. More so than a bunch of flowers, it conveyed exactly what was needed. Her goal was to master my language. Short and clumsy but heartfelt, my dad started texting. At Baptist Memorial, I observed a case study that utilized your method. Impressive outcomes. Are you increasing the number of developers you're employing? Know someone with a background in both computer science and medical ethics at Harvard Medical School. Perhaps that might work. It seemed as though, cautiously and piece by piece, they were rebuilding the bridge they had burned down. Their metamorphosis as individuals was a surprise to me. However, they were improved replicas of their former selves. With greater transparency, no guarantees. More intrigued, Brandon caught everyone by surprise. Not due to drama, but due to alignment, he and Claire had voluntarily delayed their wedding. They intended to recast it, a more diminutive object, extra deliberate. Each tasting was an invitation-only affair. With each and every flower arrangement meeting, we stroll around every place. Beyond that, though, Brandon and I had grown rather close, for reasons other than duty. Just because he began phoning me randomly to inquire about my week, rather than to discuss our family or his professional life, for the purpose of sending memes in order to express frustration with the insanity that is the hospital bureaucracy, so that he and Claire could show off the foster puppy they had taken in. Upon hearing him say, "You're the most impressive person I know," I chose not to reply. In the end, I just let it remain. Words were unnecessary for me. Nonetheless, I valued them. Over takeaway at my apartment one night, he said something that will stay with me forever. "You know what, I might have harbored resentment toward you if your parents had shown you the kind of love and support you always deserved." I was shocked and glanced up. When he said it, he meant it. Your intelligence was unparalleled. Having the status of the one who made it gave me a sense of security, though important. He sighed, and I believe I concealed myself for quite some time behind that. I ain't gonna confess, that was lucidity, and I held it in the highest regard. Issues of heritage pressure and fear were discussed, regarding the experience of being a child in a household where affection was evaluated by means of material possessions. We weren't able to resolve everything, but we did begin to communicate in a common emotional language. There was more to Claire now than just connecting people. Her friendship blossomed. Our opportunity to work together inside Horizon was unique, and it allowed us to have a positive impact in our personal and professional lives. Professionally, she grasped who I was. The family was clear to her. Above all else, she held them in high regard. When old wounds arose, she became someone I could talk to. My mom would slip up every now and again and say things like, "This reminds me of when Brandon shadowed that cardiologist," as if everything had to revolve around him. I was been invited to give a leadership speak at Stanford, and my dad tried to offer me criticism. Claire would softly remark, "They're making an effort, plus they're picking it up. However, you must not allow them to alter the account of your life." Further, I refrained from doing so. Chapters were simply added by me. There were some uncomfortable times. During a tour of the MedBridge office, my mom exclaimed, "You know, Olivia, I never imagined you'd be leading something like this." Mildly, I shifted my gaze to her. No worries, I have always done. Subsequently, she nodded. Something changed in that nod. I am not sorry. Shame not. Respect, however, I felt noticed for the first time rather than just tolerated. When we were in treatment, Dr. Reynolds once said, "In your opinion, what does it mean to be healed?" At that moment, I was unable to respond. Actually, I do now. When we gather around the table for Sunday supper without resumes, that's when we start to heal. Seems like a dad inquiring about the new user interface launch, but he's not trying to be critical. He just wants to know how things went. Thought this was dope. Seems to be a brother's text message to you. You should be proud. Sitting serenely in the rear row of your keynote address, your mom appears to be clenching her purse and smiling so broadly that she is on the verge of tears. What you see is making peace with those who have wronged you again, although poorly and slowly. Just because it's unfair, but the reason is because you are the one who does. The final stage in regaining your value is letting go of resentment. Also, you've matured to the point that you no longer require validation from others to feel whole. When will it, though? You are well versed in its reception, unlike water to a parched landscape, but like sunshine on a flower that is already in blossom. I would have said public acclaim if you had asked me that question many years ago. Roll call. Having my skeptics now take me seriously. Success was demonstrating their error, I would have warned you. But at this very moment, something profound, something that did not arrive in a single defining moment, but rather in the course of countless small ones, has finally clicked for me. Making someone incorrect isn't the key to success. It's consistently demonstrating your correctness when others fail to believe you. It's making the conscious decision to keep going when everything around you seems to be falling apart. Making an effect rather than seeking approval is the goal of this endeavor, and it's realizing that even your loved ones may struggle to comprehend you. Not initially, anyhow. Most likely, never. However, your truth remains unaffected by their misinterpretation. It's not an easy lesson, a challenging one, for the simple reason that we learn early on, particularly as female members of society, that our value is relative to that of other people. Make an impression without being scary. Aim high while maintaining your likability. Achieve greatness, but in ways that they will acknowledge. Furthermore, you become perplexing whenever you depart from that structure. Threatening, completely undetectable. We learn to condense, to quiet. Patience is key before stepping out. On the other hand, I can tell you this: permission is not required. When others take notice of you, that's when your worth begins. It doesn't start with a clap. When it's eventually recognized, it doesn't get much better. When no one is looking, that's when you really shine. With the chances you take when you don't know what will happen. Even when others give up on you, you keep choosing to be yourself. That is the seat of true authority, and you'll realize you don't need it when the recognition comes, if it comes at all. Simply put, you have created an insurmountable path to success. No, that's not the reason, only because it belongs to you. Validation wasn't the initial motivation for MedBridge. It all began when we saw a flawed system and had faith in our ability to improve it. From setbacks, we emerged stronger, with uncertainty, with weary eyes, depleted financial balances, and subdued shame. Indeed, it produced the desired result. It was not chance that got us. Rather, it was our refusal to give up. This is the last thing I want to say to you. Keep going if you're creating something, anything that people don't get. Avoid trying to make other people feel better by watering down your dreams if you find them too unusual, too huge, or too chaotic. The flawed scale, not you, is to blame if your value is being evaluated using antiquated criteria. Plus, you shouldn't keep waiting for someone to ultimately acknowledge your existence. Begin to perceive yourself. You need to start rejoicing in every small step. Forward every moment of perseverance and every occasion when you stayed put, when it would have been easy to fade away. You won't feel the need to constantly seek affirmation when you reflect on this time in the future when the quiet eventually ends and the limelight is on you. An overwhelming sense of peace will wash over you. You will be able to tell, since you were not there when they applauded. You came a long time ago, and I want you to hear this loud and clear, everyone. If you've ever been disregarded, ignored, or undervalued, you are not alone. Being real does not need being seen. Being strong does not necessitate being accepted. To demonstrate your point, you are not obligated to disprove their claims. Do not stop. Your tale isn't about the witnesses. How it was experienced is what matters. Also that individual, you are that, standing tall, still constructing. That is sufficient.